Today, we're diving deep, and I mean really deep, into Surah Maryam. We're going to be doing a kind of forensic analysis, using a contemporary theological commentary to unpack the incredibly rich, layered meaning behind some of its most powerful verses. So, here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to start with the very nature of divine communication itself. Then, we'll zoom in on Prophet Zechariah's secret prayer. From there, we'll explore Maryam's unique spiritual status and get into the nitty-gritty of different types of divine messages. Then, we'll tackle the profound argument for creation out of nothing, and we'll wrap it all up by looking at the gap between human limits and God's infinite knowledge. All right, so let's kick things off right at the beginning of the story in Surah Maryam. This is where the commentary we're using introduces us to a really fundamental concept, how the divine actually communicates with humanity and the different shapes and forms that can take. Okay, so here it is. This is the actual source commentary we're going to be working from. And you can see the author doesn't waste any time. They dive straight into the chapter's first narrative, the story of the prophet Zechariah and his incredibly profound, deeply personal prayer. The commentary immediately zooms in on this poignant call to God. You know, this isn't just a simple request. It's a statement reflecting a whole lifetime of faith. Zechariah starts by describing his own physical frailty. His bones have weakened, his hair is white with age, but then he makes this crucial point. His relationship with God, his prayers, have never, ever been a source of unhappiness for him. That really sets an incredibly intimate stage for what's about to come. And that detail right there leads us to the very first big analytical question the commentary poses. Because the verse just before this one says that Zechariah calls on his Lord with a concealed call, in Arabic, nida'an khafiyan. So why the secrecy? What's the theological significance of this specific detail? It's not just a throwaway line. And this is where we really start to see the depth of the analysis, because the commentary argues that this one single phrase, nida'an khafiyan, tells us so much about Zechariah's character and his relationship with God. So what does this term actually mean? Nida'an khafiyan literally translates to a hidden or secret call. But the commentary doesn't interpret this as a prayer made out of fear. Instead, it's seen as a prayer of profound intimacy, something shared only between him and God in private. And this is where it gets really layered. The commentary unpacks multiple meanings from this one phrase. First, a secret prayer is seen as a sign of pure sincerity because there's no one else to perform for. Second, it protects a prophet's dignity, keeping his personal vulnerabilities private. Third, it shows a really deep, personal connection with God, where you don't need to make a big public show. And finally, it's the ultimate expression of faith, a belief that God's knowledge is absolute, that he hears the silent whisper just as clearly as the loudest shout. Okay, so we've just looked at the quiet, concealed, intimate call of Zechariah. Now, the analysis in our source text makes a huge pivot. It shifts its focus to Maryam, or Mary, and her experience, which involves a much more direct and frankly startling form of divine interaction. Now, this section of the commentary is absolutely fascinating because it gets into some very precise theological distinctions. The author is incredibly careful here, and they begin to draw a critical line between the kind of divine communication Maryam receives and the revelation that's given to prophets who bring scripture and law. And boom, this verse is the pivotal moment. An angel, a divine messenger, appears to Maryam in the form of a man. I mean, think about that. This isn't just an internal feeling or a dream, it's a direct external encounter. And this event becomes the central piece of the theological puzzle that the commentary is trying to solve. So this brings us right to the core problem, the main question the commentary wants to resolve. See, in mainstream Islamic theology, Maryam isn't considered a prophetess, yet she has this incredibly direct, face-to-face angelic encounter. So what was that? How do we categorize her experience? Was it the same thing as the revelation, the wahi, that prophets received? And to solve this puzzle, the commentary has to get really precise with its language. It turns to specific theological categories to classify these divine encounters. It really all comes down to definitions, to scope, to understanding exactly what we're talking about. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you've got wahi. The commentary defines this as prophetic revelation. It's exclusive to prophets, and it carries religious law and scripture for an entire community. But then, on the other side, you have other forms of divine communication. This can be ilham, which is like a divine inspiration, or karamat, which are saintly miracles or special graces. And the commentary firmly places Maryam's experience right there in that second category. It was a profound miracle, a form of divine address, for sure, but distinct from the legislative revelation that defines a prophet. All right, we're making a big shift here. We've been talking about how God communicates. Now, the analysis pivots to what that communication reveals about divine power. And this brings us to one of the most powerful concepts in the whole chapter: creation from absolute nothingness, or what philosophers call creation ex nihilo. And this is where the commentary unpacks a statement that is, it's not just theological, it's deeply philosophical. It's an argument about the nature of existence itself, and it's all rooted in God's response to Zechariah's shock when he's promised a son in his old age. This right here is the divine rebuttal. Zechariah is looking at his physical reality. He's an old man, his wife is barren, and he's questioning how this could possibly happen. But the divine response doesn't just say, "Trust me." It presents a logical proof, a precedent that Zechariah absolutely cannot deny: his own existence. So let's break down the logic here, because it's just so elegant. The commentary deconstructs this as a powerful logical argument. The premise is that Zechariah, like all of us, was created from a state of pure non-existence, from nothing. This is presented as the ultimate, most difficult act of creation. Now, the birth of his son Yahya only requires creation from existing materials, albeit old and infertile human beings. So the argument is simple but profound. If God could accomplish the greater, more miraculous act of creating you from nothing, then accomplishing the lesser act of giving you a child from existing matter is for him easy. And the author doesn't stop there. They really dig into the philosophy of it all, linking this Quranic argument to these broader philosophical debates about what it means to exist versus not exist. The text treats this verse not just as a part of the story, but as a deep statement on ontology, the study of being itself. It argues that this concept of being nothing is a critical theological and philosophical idea. Okay, so this all leads us to our final major theme that the source text explores: this profound, massive gap between our limited human perception of what's real and possible and the boundless, infinite nature of divine knowledge and power. And to really hammer this point home, the commentary brings up a recurring theme in the Qur'an: our own physical beginnings. By talking about our creation from a nutfa, just a drop of fluid, it uses our own biological reality as this incredibly powerful metaphor for just how limited our understanding is and how unlimited God's creative ability really is. You see, the argument is that we're stuck in our own perspective. We see the world through the lens of cause and effect, of physical laws. We look at an old man and a barren woman and we conclude, impossible. But the divine perspective isn't bound by all that. And the text basically argues that if we just contemplated our own beginning, the creation of a complex human being from something so seemingly insignificant, that alone should be enough proof that God can create under any circumstances he chooses. That miracle is happening all the time. And this is just the perfect bookend to the whole argument. The commentary brings it all full circle by pulling this verse from later in the very same chapter. The question that was sort of implicitly asked of Zechariah at the beginning is now thrown out to all of humanity. It's a call to remember our own origin from absolute nothingness, because that memory is the ultimate key to understanding divine power. And so we're left with this. This is the ultimate challenge the analysis leaves us with, isn't it? It asks us to move beyond just a surface-level reading of these stories and to instead use them as a lens to look at our own existence. If the proof of the ultimate miracle, our own creation from nothing, is literally within us, then how can we ever put limits on what is possible for the one who authored that existence in the first place?